Welcome.
So for people who do ask questions during this, please note that your name might appear if you ask a question. I'm not entirely sure. This is my first experience using the Zoom webinar feature. But thank you all for joining. Myself and Alex were just talking about the complexity of starting a campus chapter. We've had a few groups start on college campuses, but never have gone through the formal process of being recognized by the university. So I know a few of you are interested in starting chapters on your campuses. I saw University of North Carolina, Asheville. I saw a University of Chicago. I saw a Vanderbilt University, Pomona College in Los Angeles. So we'll definitely work closely with you guys who are founding campus chapters to walk through that process. I vaguely remember that process from my time in college, and it's kind of a pain, but there's definitely upsides to it.
Offices are never fun to work with.
Well, I just know it takes like a solid semester, and you need to find like a faculty advisor and a bunch of other things to get through that.
I remember having to go through a lot of paperwork. The faculty advisor was less challenging for a non-political group. So I'll be interested to hear any stories or information anybody who is trying to start a university chapter ends up coming up with.
And then whoever starts a university chapter is immediately going to cause some sort of wave on campus. Is going to gain some recognition. Hopefully for good reasons, but I'm sure there'll be certain groups on campus that
if you don't have snarky op-eds written about your group in the university newspaper, you really aren't doing it right.
We have a question from John Billings, which I'll answer right now. So what are the general rules regarding us asking questions? Do we ask them in the chat, ask them in the Q&A thing, raise hands? I would ask them in the Q&A widget. I think that's the best way, especially if we get a lot of answers. We'll be able to sort through them based on how many upvotes they have to see which are most important. But I'll also be keeping an eye on the chat. I don't think we'll be using the raise hands feature, though, during this webinar, just because we're expecting a decent turnout. It'd probably just be a little bit chaotic, and I know some people don't have microphones set up. So if you have any questions, use the Q&A widget, or feel free to post them in the chat. Thanks, that was a good question, John. All right, it's 8 o'clock. We're gonna give people a few more minutes to come in, but thank you all for attending. We're really excited by the turnout we got from this, and we'll be continuing this monthly. So in theory, you won't have to attend another one of these if you come to the first one to hear our explanation of how this process works. But I don't know, maybe if you really love it, you can come for July's information session too. No worries. I'm still learning how to use the webinar feature on Zoom too. And this is my first time, so this is a learning process for all of us. All right, I think we will get started with introductions. This will still give some people some time to get in before we start talking about the important information. So I'll introduce myself first. My name is Colin Mortimer. I am the Executive Director of the Neoliberal Project at the Progressive Policy Institute. Progressive Policy Institute, I have the wordiest title ever. I kind of have my hands on everything. I help with the organizing. I help with the policy side of what we do. I help with the media side of what we do, especially the podcasting. But I'd say most of my day to day is doing operational stuff, just trying to advance the organization and increase our capacity for doing different things. The idea for this information session came from me and Alex talking and trying to figure out the best way to recruit new people who want to found chapters in their city. It might be intimidating. Our old process was submitting a form or emailing Alex directly. I know that might be intimidating for some people, especially if they don't even know what questions to ask. So we're hoping that this process will give people a baseline introduction, and then later we'll explain how we're going to do follow-ups afterwards. But thank you all for attending. And we will gladly answer any questions that you have during this. For those who are just joining, we have the Q&A widget here, and then we also have the chat feature. You can use either to ask questions or have comments, and then we'll be glad to answer them. Probably get most of them at the end of the session. But Alex, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure thing. So my name is Alex Newbegin. I am the community director for the Neoliberal Project. My main job is that I help to coordinate and facilitate. The last time I did the count, it's now roughly 40 chapters in 5 different countries. And I'm sure after this call, Colin and I were kind of blown away by the international diversity that we had received in RSVPs from people expressing interest in organizing countries. So I anticipate that both of those numbers of chapters and numbers of countries in which we operate are going to skyrocket. But some of my main responsibilities, like I said, I coordinate with all of the chapter leads. That includes doing most of the promotion for all of the events that we do. So if you've seen any posts about organizing for the Neoliberal Project on Reddit, Twitter, a lot of that is me. I also do a lot of operations, kind of like Colin said, is really most of the day-to-day stuff is working with the organizers to make sure that they're sending clean emails and that they're setting up attractive, attention-grabbing Eventbrites, doing kind of cleanup stuff on Facebook pages, boring stuff like that. But the most exciting part of my day is when I do get to talk to you guys. This is I think Colin and I definitely agree. The way we were doing this before was one-on-one interviews, which is really great to get to know everybody, but with the amount of interest we've gotten recently and starting new chapters, this is definitely going to be a more effective way and hopefully a more comfortable way for some of you guys to express your interest and potentially start a neoliberal chapter in your community.
Yeah, definitely. Everything just that Alex just said is spot on. So I want to give a quick overview of the Neoliberal Project for those who are new to our organization, or those who are familiar with us but might not know the entire history, because I think we're definitely unique in the type of organization we are. So we started off in February of 2017 as a group of people who started the Neoliberal subreddit on reddit.com. Back then, we had no ulterior motives. We were a bunch of economists in training, people interested in economics, who wanted to do a tongue-in-cheek community that was reclaiming the label that people had pejoratively associated with us. But we wanted to say, like, haha, you're calling us neoliberals. We're just going to call ourselves neoliberals and just espouse our moderate, wonky, pragmatic beliefs. To all of our surprise, that community took off. And it's really grown into what you've seen today. It was probably like a year between the founding of the Reddit and us starting the podcast and the Twitter account, when we kind of realized, like, we were onto something far bigger than just a tongue-in-cheek joke subreddit. So we started the Neoliberal Project. Back in February of this year, so 3 years to the date of when we started the Neoliberal Project, we joined the Progressive Policy Institute. The Progressive Policy Institute is a think tank in Washington, D.C. That traces its roots back to founding the New Democratic Movement in the United States, helping to elect Bill Clinton to the presidency in 1992, and really paving the way for the ideological center-left within the Democratic Party. So in my capacity at the Progressive Policy Institute, I do much of the same, but now we have the the institutional and resources that back up our mission. So this is one of those things. And we, because of the additional capacity we now have, we have the opportunity to add a number of new chapters, not only in the United States, but around the world, which is why we're here today. So I'm going to let Alex now explain the history of our organizing efforts and talk about some of the accomplishments our chapters across the country have had.
Sure. And to do a little bit of I guess a pitch, I'll also talk about some things that I wasn't around for, because while Colin's been around since the beginning, I started lurking on neoliberal Twitter probably around fall of 2017. Really felt like the community kind of echoed with all of the values that I had, and really felt like it was a community that, one, I felt safe in online, and two, I could uh, potentially take somewhere with a degree of effort, with kind of the idea being that my political background very much grew up a blue dog Democrat in kind of rural Pennsylvania. All my family were kind of in the bag for Joe Biden since the very beginning, and some of the most valuable experiences that I've had in my life from a political sense were my work with Obama for America as a volunteer in 2012. I really enjoyed that kind of in-person political action that I got to take. I thought it was a lot more rewarding than just being involved with the news cycle, talking with people on Twitter. I was hoping to potentially get into a role that allowed me to exercise that material. And I think before I joined in November of 2018, you guys had attempted some kind of meetups, but realized that kind of a more centralized organ was needed in order to facilitate organized chapters around the country, which is when I came into the picture in around November of 2018. And roughly the conversation that Colin and I had is that essentially, with the constrained time and resources that we both have to organize chapters around the United States and around the world, the best way to set these up is to create a decentralized network of chapters that we provide with a platform, we provide with knowledge, we provide with training and resources, and then to let them go out and to be as successful as they can be, not on their own, but in spite of us. With the idea being that, as much as I would love to jet set to some of the places that I've seen on this list, Dublin, Pittsburgh, it's different places in California, unfortunately, it's just not in the budget. You guys are going to be the ones who know the most about your city or location and are going to be able to the most successfully organize your chapter. That's kind of our philosophy for how we approach setting up chapters, but what we actually want our chapters to do also has a degree of kind of philosophy and nuance to it. The way we think about what our organization does is it makes a concerted effort to influence politics at a local level, with the idea being that it may take millions and millions of dollars to get Joe Biden elected president of the United States, but it'll only take a couple $100,000 to elect somebody's city council person. And arguably, the decisions that a city council person is going to make, things about zoning, transportation, local taxation, most relevantly, police enforcement in your city, are going to be made by that local official and are going to be more impactful on your life on a daily basis than a decision that Donald Trump is making in the White House. So with that kind of disparity, that it's easier to exert effort to get a local politician elected as opposed to a national politician, and the influence that local politics exerts. Our goal is now to create these local chapters to have that influence on local politics. The final piece comes in that the people who are involved with our community are very politically active. They're very engaged in news cycle, but aren't so engaged necessarily in actually acting out politics. So maybe they're doing politics as a hobby, but not really politics as a vocation. And especially at a local level, a lot of the reason why people aren't as plugged in is because there's an asymmetry of information in between what people know about national, regional, or international politics versus local politics, because there's just not the same degree of information coverage, or because maybe in the case of a lot of us university students who have moved to a new place to go to school, or are fresh out of college and in a new city because they just started a job. So you don't have that grounding in local civics that you would get growing up as a kid in that community reading the newspaper every weekend. So our goal is to really create chapters where we're educating folks who are interested in the Neoliberal Project in local issues, and then activating them to take action upon those local issues to influence politics, to match the worldview that our and values that our project espouses.
Yeah, I agree with everything Alex just said. I think there's been some really interesting cases. I know a few of our members have joined a chapter in one city, moved to another city for a job, and then joined a chapter in that city. So it's kind of been this nationwide network of people where they know that if I'm moving to another city, there's going to be this organization, this group of people who are already like-minded, who can be like my initial network when I move to a new city. Nicholas R had a question in the chat that I just want to answer. He said, is the Neoliberal Project a 501c4? That's a really good question, and I think I should just explain quickly what that means before I answer it. So there are two different kinds of organizations that you really see in the political sphere are 501c3s and 501c4s. 501c3s are nonprofit, technically educational institutes that when they receive donations, those donations are tax deductible. So the Progressive Policy Institute is a 501c3, Niskanen, R Street, Brookings, AEI, all of the biggest think tanks that you know of are 501c3, and then a number of other organizations are likely 501c3s as well. But importantly about being a 501c3 is that prevents you from doing political organizing. And that's very specific. It's not the political organizing we're doing where we're getting people together. It's like the Neoliberal Project as a part of the Progressive Policy Institute as it exists now cannot endorse candidates, endorse legislation is really the best way to look at that. So like we've told chapters before that like the Portland neoliberals cannot endorse a candidate for city council. That would be, it probably wouldn't get us in trouble, but we don't want to test it out. And it doesn't really cause too many problems to us, and it gives us the incentive for people who want to support the project or support PPI to get tax deductibility on their donations. 501c4s are allowed to endorse candidates, endorse legislation, do political organizing, but the donations to those organizations are not tax deductible. In the future, it's likely that the Neoliberal Project will either become a C4 or have a C4 arm to just better ensure ourselves against any sort of risk of regulation from the IRS or another government agency. But as of now, we are an LLC that's a part of PPI. And because we are a part of PPI, we follow the 501c3 rules. Yeah, no problem. Thanks for that question, Nicholas. That's a good one. So yeah, I think that's a pretty good rundown from Alex. I know we also have some current leads who are watching right now. I'm going to talk about a few examples of successes chapters have had across the country. And if you guys are leads from your own chapters, definitely add your experience being a lead to the chat, how it's been, how many meetings have you run, how many members that you have, to kind of give attendees a perspective of what it's like to be a lead. So I have 3 examples written down right now. So our San Francisco chapter is probably our most politically engaged chapter in the country because they do a lot of work with SFUMB. So the lead out there is Stephen Buss. He is on the board of SFUMB, and he formed YIMBY Neoliberal, which is the localized name for SF Neoliberals, to really push back on what he saw as like a growing influence of socialists in the YIMBY movement. He wanted to form his own coalition. And he's done really amazing work on not only in his capacity in YIMBY, but also in his capacity as a YIMBY neoliberal lead, going to zoning hearings, organizing people to go to those zoning hearings, really pushing the politicians in San Francisco to adopt more YIMBY stances. I mean, they're partially responsible for the election of London Breed and elevating a YIMBY mayor in that city. So I highly suggest that people check out SFYIMBY and YIMBY Neoliberal to see what the possibilities of political organizing in the city are. In your city might be, correction. Then we have DC. DC is the city I'm in. I helped to lead that, the group here, though it's sometimes hard leading it and also doing my full-time job, which I know there were some people who signed up for this with interest in leading in DC. So I'm going to be emailing you because you're You might be my lifeline. But the DC chapter is by far our largest chapter. It's twice as large as our New York chapter. Unsurprisingly, people in DC are neoliberals. And we have great turnout events. So just before coronavirus happened, we had a Super Tuesday watch party at PPI, and I think we had over 100 people attend that. So we have high expectations once the coronavirus pandemic ends to hit the ground running and really use our numbers to become a political force in the city. But finally, the other chapter I want to highlight is the Charlotte chapter, which Alex helps to co-lead and is a member of because he's based in Charlotte, North Carolina. Alex, I'll let you explain what you guys have done, especially the stuff you've done during coronavirus. I think it's pretty impressive.
Sure thing. So I won't take all of the credit. Morgan Reinhardt, I'm not sure if he's in the chat right now or not, is the primary lead for the Charlotte chapter and has done a really amazing job so far during the coronavirus pandemic of reaching out to folks running for state and for regional level office in the state of North Carolina and getting them out to come speak to the Charlotte chapter. So our biggest gets to this point, we had, I think maybe 2 months ago at this point, we had Ronnie Chatterjee, who is the Democratic candidate to be the treasurer of the state of North Carolina, come out and speak to our group. It was a really great conversation because I think a lot of the time when he was on the campaign trail and now that he's on the virtual campaign trail, he's having some kind of event with Dan Pfeiffer from Pod Save America in about a week or so. And I'll give a little background, I guess. Ronnie Chatterjee, he is a Duke professor at the Fuqua Business School, and he teaches corporate strategy and previously worked as an advisor on the Obama Council of Economic Advisors. So Guy has kind of a blue chip resume, but spends a lot of time, again, on the campaign trail, probably talking about very kind of basic voter level issues, why Republicans bad. And it was a really great opportunity for us to have a nuanced conversation with him about things like the state's pension deficit, about things like how the Department of the Treasury is also responsible for overseeing health pension plans and for overseeing a lot of the healthcare benefit distribution throughout the state of North Carolina. We also had a really great conversation with Jenna Wadsworth, who is the Democratic candidate for the Department of Agriculture, or to be the chair of the Department of Agriculture in the state of North Carolina, who her roles and responsibilities touch every single issue from climate change to migration to soil usage to urban development and to rural broadband. Actually, that was one of the more interesting things that I learned about coming out of that conversation. So really this group, kind of through either sheer luck or force of numbers, has been doing a really great job in bringing out candidates to talk to folks about really hard-hitting current local issues and to help us to develop these relationships with politicians. I'll also bring up 2 other examples that I know of off at the top of my head that are really impactful in my mind and demonstrate the kind of good work that our organizers do. One of them is, I know some of our groups have been exploring potential opportunities to do volunteer work with various groups throughout the United States that align with our values. So groups like Catholic Charities who do sponsorship for immigrants, whether that be ESL work, health education, or any kind of immigrants advocacy work they could possibly do. I know there's been some groups that were exploring that, at least pre-coronavirus. And then the other one that I'm really excited about that hopefully will get picked up again after the pandemic dies down is, I know our group in Philadelphia has been organizing with some allied groups in that city to stage a protest at a migrant detention center in Berks County, Pennsylvania, which is just slightly outside of Philadelphia. So that's just kind of a small taste of what our folks do in terms of actual on the ground work. It really gets even more diverse than that. We have folks who live tweet entire zoning meetings. We have folks who host happy hours. We have Timmy Supplet in this chat, who's our organizer in Denver, who is now personal friends with Jared Polis, the governor of Colorado. So we've had a lot of success in terms of our in-person organizing up until this point, and I'm really proud of all of our folks who've been on the ground doing that work so far.
Yeah, I definitely want to repeat that point. It's really awesome to see what the individual chapters do on their own. Echoing Alex's point earlier, like even I wish I could jet around and just visit every chapter in the country. And I think I had plans to visit a few before the pandemic hit. but it's really amazing to see what the groups do once you just give them a community and a few people to start the group, and just like the will to really affect political change in their local community. To answer Clay's question really quick, he asked, sorry, what's the name of the Charlotte guy again? And that's Morgan Reinhardt. I believe you can find him on Twitter. Morgan Reinhardt, Reinehart. There you go. Or maybe I spelled it wrong. And then we'll answer the rest of the questions at the end. So, Alex, do you want to get into the chapter founding process? I know we both have some points we want to touch on, but you probably have the broad overview down better than I do.
Sure. So I want to quickly, just before we get onto that, I want to touch on kind of something a little more contextual, given the nature of the fact that we described all these kind of really awesome live in-person events that we've hosted that are now not feasible because we're kind of in the middle of a global pandemic. So this is really honestly the worst time to be starting chapters in one hand, but on the other, it's also a really great hand, because what it does for new organizers is it allows you an opportunity to build your base, to build your audience. So when the time does come to host kickoff events, to host happy hours, you'll have a strong and ready base of attendees. And the way we've been prescribing for our organizers to do that is by developing an online platform for yourself, with the idea being that we hit on that focus on local politics and local information and local issues. The Neoliberal Project Twitter is the primary platform to get neoliberal information on Twitter, but has a very broad focus just on the nature of it being a global project. And also because most of the mods, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Colin, at this point are all American. It's also not as global as it could be. It's global to the point where I think we're knowledgeable about a lot of politics in the Anglosphere, but not too far outside of that. So
we have a Canadian mod.
We have a Canadian mod.
But besides that, they're all United States and Canada.
Everybody else is, so again, so very Anglosphere heavy, without really much exposure outside of that, which is why having our chapters form their own online presences, whether it's a Twitter account, whether it's a Facebook group, whether it's an Instagram page, anything that you can think of to share that local content online is important, because it allows you to take the broad neoliberal message that the Neoliberal Project shares and focus it through a local lens to make it contextual for your audience. And if you live in a Latin American or South American country, if you live in Europe, if you live in the Middle East or Asia, these online accounts will actually give you the opportunity to share that information and that message of the Neoliberal Project in your language and in a message that your broader regional area will understand as well, and give us more global coverage in that online presence, which is something that we don't really have, but that we're beginning to gain. So I think probably our best example is we now have Twitter accounts for Singapore, Stockholm, London, and Mexico City in terms of our international Twitter accounts. And a lot of them have really begun to function as kind of de facto national accounts for the Neoliberal Project for those countries as well. So developing that online platform will not only help you to reach a local audience with a very tailored and personal message, it will also allow you to, what was I going to say, even share messages with your region and in your native language. And so we received a question from Jorge Gomez, who asked, do you have any chapters in South America or Hispanic America? To this point, we have a Mexico City chapter that we started last week. That is our only chapter, but we have a number of others that are upcoming. And then we also have a question from Michael Bending about, you mentioned the importance of local politics. Do you have any advice for getting more plugged into the local levels? So that's something that we'll get into a little bit in kind of that, how the national chapter works to transfer that information, because that is one of many questions I'm sure you guys have about how to do the work of a chapter organizer. But we'll get into what Colin hinted at that we were going to do next, which is to talk a little bit about how to actually kick off a process. And I just want to get out of the way, there's no kind of paperwork, there's no threshold or interview. If you're interested in starting a chapter, we're interested in working with you. Our only requirement is that you be energetic and motivated to make this account work. What Colin and I have discussed is that we want these chapters to be your personal passion project. We want you to make these chapters as great as you can possibly be. And if you need to put yourself at the forefront of those to really make them yours, then absolutely 100% do that. That's really our only requirement. If you do have experience doing any kind of organizing before, that's absolutely great, but it's not required for anybody to start a chapter. So I guess the actual process, if we're talking about next steps, the way it will look is that Colin and I will send emails to the people who have attended this call and gotten information off the back of it, kind of explaining information. You guys will kind of fall into a couple buckets. There will be people or groups who are interested in starting chapters in cities that do not currently have chapters. And then there will be, or where we have a chapter that existed previously but is now defunct, or we will be sending information to people and groups who are interested in starting new chapters in a city that we already have a chapter. In that situation, we'll be getting you plugged in with the existing organizer in that city or community or university in order to get you integrated into the leadership structure of that chapter. In the case that you are starting a brand new chapter, there's a little bit of a give and take. Kind of the first thing that needs to be done with any of these chapters is to get your online presence started. There's a checklist of things that I'll run through real quick that you'll want to make sure that you'll have. You want to make sure that you create your own email account, preferably on Gmail with some kind of abstraction of your community and at gmail.com on that, so that people know it's a centralized email. You don't have to use your personalized email to communicate with folks. You'll also want to look to create a Twitter chapter or Twitter page for your chapter. Facebook groups at this point, I think, Colin, correct me if I'm wrong, we are still creating Facebook groups for folks, but we will
Yes.
notify you when your Facebook group is created. And if you join it, we'll go ahead and add you as the admin. And the
Yes,
last things,
I'll explain briefly once Alex is done what that process is, because I usually handle that, so you know what to expect, what the project is going to provide, and what you're expected to do on your end.
yeah. And then so the last thing I guess I'll get into are the things that we provide you access to, because we have a lot of online resources. This is one of the things we've talked a lot about, kind of what we expect our chapter organizers to do, but the things that you can expect from us at the bare minimum, we are going to give you access to an email list for all the emails of interested people in your community who want to join a chapter. We'll give you provision to that email list. We'll give you access to our mail server. We have a MailChimp that I think we're actually rolling out today, essentially for all of our chapters to use to automate a lot of your email communication. We'll give you access to digital conferencing software, which has never been more important than it is right now for organizing. So we have a centralized Zoom account that folks will host their digital meetups on. We'll give you access to our Eventbrite page so you can create invites. And then finally, we'll be provisioning you information to join our neoliberal Slack community, where all of our organizers from all over the world gather. And finally, to the rough draft of an organizing toolkit, which will roughly explain step by step everything you will need to do and consider to start a chapter.
And we also send you stickers.
And we also send you stickers.
Don't forget about the stickers.
The stickers are the most important part.
Yeah, I'll just add to that. So what the founding process really looks like, and I keep saying the word process, but the process isn't really the right word, is what's going to happen is, like Alex said, we're going to email everyone who attended this meeting afterwards with one of three follow-up emails. Either we're going to be like, you're starting a brand new chapter, let's do this. You want to start a chapter, and so do all these other people. We have a few cities like that where a number of people express interest. So we're going to put you in an email chain and be like, hi, you all want to start this chapter. Let's get this going. And then there's the people who said that they want to lead chapters in cities that already have leads. And we're going to send you an email with that existing lead CC'd and just be like, hi, we're introducing you guys. You guys should work together and we'll onboard you. Following that, one day I'm going to sit down in front of my computer and churn out all of the back end stuff for you guys. So I'm going to create a sign up page on our website for your city. I'm going to create a Facebook group with customized graphics. I'm going to get you a MailChimp database. We have some automation software we use to to build up our email list that we rolled out this past week. We're going to get that set up for you as well. So you don't have to do anything technical on your end, and we're just going to give this to you and be like, hello, run free. Speaking of what Alex just said with resources, the way you get access to all this stuff is that we have a chapter resources page on the Neoliberal Project website. So if you go to neoliberalproject.org right now and you go to the chapters tab and you highlight it, it will say chapters and then chapter resources. And if you click chapter resources, it's password protected. If you become a lead, you get the password to that page. And on that page is our Zoom login, our Eventbrite login, our MailChimp login, our organizing manual. We also have a resource request form. If you want anything, whether it's stickers, event space, you name it, you can put in a resource request. And we go through that periodically and approve or reject requests. And fulfill those for you guys from our existing pool of funding. So that enables you guys to do your job more effectively. You're never at any point expected to pay for stuff out of pocket. Of course, if you want to do that, that's great, but we don't expect you to dedicate any of your money to this. The only thing you have to dedicate is your time, because unfortunately, we can't be in 50 cities at once. We have 2 questions that I'll answer right now. So, question from Nicholas: Are there bylaws or a constitution to the organization? No. That's something that we've talked about starting, but as of now, we don't have like a central document for all of the Neoliberal Project chapters to follow. We really want you guys to carve out what you think are your guiding philosophies for your individual chapter. The loose example I'll use for that is that there's definitely variation in the political views and the stances and the organizing that chapters do in each city. Our Nashville chapter is more conservative than our San Francisco chapter. That's not to say that they're vastly different, but our chapters definitely reflect the local values and the local political trends of the people who live there, which is what you should be doing. And then we have a question from Gabrielle. Do you have some good materials in describing what our reinterpretation of neoliberalism is? Something concentrated so that it can be easily translated. So we have what's on our website, and then we have some writing I have done personally that might be good. Just kind of to describe about like what our views are, what we're kind of trying to push, what our interpretation of like historical definitions of neoliberalism is, and which one we adhere to would be helpful. And you can find those all on the Neoliberal Project website.
I actually, because I have it tagged in the local organizing toolkit, your article, How Modern Neoliberals Rediscovered Neoliberalism, is something I actually cite in our organizing manual. So I just went ahead and shot it off to the group for everybody to have as a resource, because that's, not to toot your horn, Colin, but probably one of the best pieces anybody has written to this point about what our group is trying to do.
It's my job. I have to live and breathe it.
Literally your job. We have another question now. I'm really sorry. I'm going to butcher your name. Alyssa Mayuda, how will you guys hold get-togethers after COVID? Would love to connect with you guys, especially since I'm kind of new to the DMV. I'll let you answer that one.
Yes, I recognize you. I'm guessing you're the one who registered for Washington D.C. Yeah, I'll definitely be in touch with you following this webinar to discuss DC. I would definitely love to have a larger leadership team here in DC organizing, because currently me and oh, excuse me, it's me and Tom Fish. So we'd love to have you to help us organize here, so we can talk soon after. Alex, do you have anything additional to add to the chapter founding process portion?
Sure. So I think actually this gets on a great point, and I've had some additional thoughts now about another question that was asked in the chat about finding information about local resources. This is something that I'd encourage all of you guys to do. I listed kind of the literal next steps, very tactical type stuff, but from a strategic perspective, this ties in very closely with what Colin mentioned about kind of all of our chapters, all of our online personas having their own unique flavor. You should, before you go about doing any of the things that I mentioned, really have a hard think about the community that you live in and what your persona can be as a neoliberal chapter inside of that city. You should think about things like, how large is your city? Is it very sprawling? Is it very tight and dense? I know Charlotte is actually geographically one of the 3 largest cities in the United States. It's something like 3 to 4 times geographically larger than Washington, D.C., but it has the same population as Washington, D.C. That's something that will factor into how you organize, whether it's literally the politics and projects that you type to push, or where, when, why, and how you try to get groups together once COVID does end. You should think about the demographics, the education, the religious and racial and immigration background makeup of your city. You should think about whether or not people are politically involved in a city like Washington, D.C., where everyone is politically involved. A city like San Francisco, where people are also deeply politically involved. You should consider whether or not your city has that culture. Once you go through kind of that consideration, then maybe take a look at what are some current issues in my city. And to answer the question about how to get locally involved, that's really the first step, is to seek out local news sources, is to try to divide your information diet to the degree that you're reading news and add more local sources to your information diet and really get involved and interested and educated on issues in your community, issues about zoning, issues about transportation, issues about police brutality, about access to transportation, about food deserts in certain communities, about segregation, whether it's legal or it's been enforced by decades of redlining, um, um, a lack of busing policy in your city. To really get involved and educated about those issues, begin to think about them through the neoliberal lens, and then look for the levers of power that you can exercise to take action on that. Do research on who your city council people are, what their responsibilities are, what the division of power and responsibilities between different groups in your civics, how, if you live in a city or a county, how responsibilities are shared between those entities. Getting involved on that information is going to be the cornerstone. And really, part of your job as the lead of a chapter is to be that knowledge pool, so that when people come to you with really, really nuanced questions like, am I allowed to submit public comment during zoning meetings? Why is zoning meeting A different from zoning meeting B that the city holds, even though they're basically back to back? What is the different purposes? These are the type of information that we're hoping one day you guys will be able to answer for your people. The last thing that I wanted to add on top of that, we've had a little bit of a conversation about what the national chapter can do for you, because everything is kind of so decentralized. The two things that we haven't really touched on that I think are probably the most valuable resources that we give you access to. The first one is our platform, the fact that we have 67,000 subs on the subreddit. We have some 40,000 Twitter followers, all of our Facebook pages, our Instagram page, our email lists. We have a massive platform where any message, any type of event you're trying to promote, all you need to do is reach out to us and we will blast it all across all of those platforms and make sure that anybody who needs to know about what you are doing or what you're trying to say will know. And the last and probably the most important bit of information that or resource that we provide to our organizers is access to information about how to organize. That really, the best resource for that is in the Slack channel that we have dedicated just for organizers, where any question that you have about organizing, no matter how inane you think it is, somebody's going to have an answer for it. We have regular touch points on a bi-weekly basis now, where our organizers from all over the world will talk about what they're working on, what they've been doing that works really well for them, what hasn't worked so well, to facilitate a conversation about those types of things. And then again, as I kind of alluded to earlier, the final resource is a organizer toolkit, which in a lot of ways, hearing Colin talk about some of the things that a constitution should do, the toolkit kind of satisfies a lot of those things, talking about our values and then really how to put them into practice, how to take action upon those values in an online and an in-person setting. So that was the totality of what I had to say on that topic, Colin, unless you had anything to add.
Yeah, I don't think I have much more to add. I think just the really important thing to highlight is like founding a chapter is what you make of it. We can give you all these resources and we can give you all this guidance and try to help you as much as possible, make your job as easy as possible. But this all depends on you guys not only founding the chapter, but scheduling your first event, making sure that you're maintaining your email list, scheduling your second event, making contacts with local politicians. So it's entirely a game of will here. So while we hope that our support will instill some motivation and some willingness to really throw yourself into the deep end with organizing a neoliberal chapter in your city, at the end of the day, it's up to you guys to make one of why can't I speak today? Make what you want of this opportunity. We have a question. We have 2 questions in the Q&A that we'll answer. And then I think we're going to come to the end of this. We'll end a little bit early, but we'll have some closing thoughts. We have a question from an anonymous attendee. Are you looking for authors in other languages? Also, yes, we always love contributions from English language contributors, the Spanish language contributors, and whatever your local language is. But we also encourage people, if you're founding a chapter, to consider even like starting a newsletter for your city. Our Los Angeles chapter currently does that, where every month he sends out some news, some links about what's going on in LA. So if you're interested in writing, you might want to use that as your vehicle for your writing. And then we have a question from Donacha. Sorry if I mispronounced that. In terms of advocating for policy change, do chapters or their members typically publish articles in their own local national media or get materials in interested journalists? So we've just begun to start that. I think you're going to see more of this in the coming weeks and months. So our, I think it's Marcos. He might be in this. Maybe not. He's not. We had a member or one of the leads of our Austin chapter write a piece on tech antitrust and is in the process of getting that published in a local newspaper in his city. And the Neoliberal Project and the Progressive Policy Institute worked with him on that. So yes, we would really love to see that kind of stuff. It's really attractive to not only institutional backers, but just wider people who are in the political game of seeing local members engaged in the op-ed process. Me, you, and the rest of the people in here might not read op-eds, but the people who do read op-eds will use it as a signal, really value it. So we really encourage local leads, if they're in a city and they really care passionately about an issue, to submit letters to the editor, write op-eds that they can get published. And as always, the Neoliberal Project and the Progressive Policy Institute would be more than happy to help you along with that process, because it benefits all of us, really. So there's no more questions right now, but if you have any final questions before we wrap up in a few minutes, please get them in. We'd be happy to answer them. But Alex, do you have any more closing thoughts or any additional thoughts to the chapter founding process?
Thoughts or additional? Nothing else from me. I think I covered most of the ground. Like I said, we will be reaching out directly to you. All you need to do at this point to get access to the resources that we talked about and to get kicked off with the process is, once you receive that email, just respond to us and confirm that you are interested in starting a chapter, where you are interested in starting that chapter, and we will get you started along the right path to do that. If you feel like you would like to have a follow-up call because you have questions that maybe you feel that you don't want to ask in this forum, or because you thought of them later, or just things that you want to get in your mind satisfied before you go about starting a chapter, I'll be happy to have a one-on-one conversation with you in order to get that process going. But other than that, I am very excited about the number of new faces here and about the potential of this group to get a lot of new chapters started in a very short period of time.
Yeah, likewise, whatever, everything that Alex just said. Thank you for all who spend time in their evenings or their mornings. I know we have some international attendees, so thank you for being flexible with Eastern Standard Time. We're working to create solutions for our international members and our leads to be able to attend these not at 3 a.m. in the morning. Karam Guler has a question. Are local chapters allowed to engage in lawsuits against local decisions to influence policy? That would definitely be an odd approach to local organizing, and I don't think I would recommend it just on an organizing basis. You want to influence people, and you want to create coalitions and grow your group, and I don't know if joining in lawsuits would be a productive use of your time. But if this was a specific case in your city, I'd be happy to have a conversation with you about why you might think that might be a good course of action. It might be in your city. I can't speak for your locality. We have a question from Anonymous. Joined a bit late. Will a recording be made available? Yes, we have recorded this. We'll likely upload it to our YouTube sometime tomorrow. And in the follow-up email that I'm going to send tomorrow morning or tomorrow afternoon, I'll include a link to the YouTube video. I have a question from Dan. Regarding advocating for policy change, how much crossover is there typically with local Democratic Party chapters, or are chapters more independent? How do you avoid stepping on toes of local party leaders? I'll let Alex add some thoughts to this, but I'll add some of what we've encountered. Um, so generally what we expect to happen when chapters are founded, and especially if chapters become a force within local politics, is that local activists will get wind of this new chapter, and they're either going to think of you as a rival, or they're going to think of you as a potential partner. San Francisco being San Francisco, I think the SF neoliberals have annoyed people by just existing and calling themselves neoliberals, but they've really developed great bonds with some Democratic Party leaders, with some YIMBY activists to really be a force within politics in that city. In Nashville, we are working with the congressman in that city and his staff to really do good work there. So this might have been paused because of COVID, but before COVID, we were in discussions with the congressman's office because he's in a tight re-election battle to really create this center-left grassroots support for him, and to partner with Democratic associations in that city. And in the words of his chief of staff, she talked about how, like, if this chapter lead is good and this chapter is effective, that I can advance his or her career in the city and make them a force within politics. That's how politics works. So I don't think you should worry about stepping on toes. Like, either you're going to go out there and you're going to be successful, and if you step on people's toes, it means you're doing good work, or people are going to want to partner with you and work with you, which is even better. But look out for those opportunities, and the Neoliberal Project national organization will also feed you these opportunities, because we have discussions where we mention, we have a chapter in this city, we have a chapter in that country, and local leaders and foundations and organizations will be like, okay, we want to work with them and really get to know them. So like I said earlier in this call, use this founding process, becoming a lead, as an opportunity, not only to contribute to your local community, but possibly as one of being a professional opportunity. Because as we've seen with some of our most successful chapters, if you can tie your personal success to the success of the chapter, that means your incentives are in line, and you're only going to want to be more invested in the success of your chapter.
And I'll add to that really quickly. The reason why we don't overlap is because the Neoliberal Project is not running candidates, right? There's no neoliberal candidate for mayor or senator. Our role is really, again, to activate people around specific issues and values, and in any way we can build coalitions with local Democratic groups. It just happens to work out in the United States that because the Republican Party is it's a lot of things, but it's definitely not neoliberal friendly at this point for the most part. There are obviously noticeable exceptions for specific individuals, but this group is not overly friendly to our organization. We do overlap a lot with the Democratic Party. I would encourage you in any way that you possibly can to work with those groups and figure out ways that you can overlap. I would actually, if you are starting a new chapter and you have a sizable impact, I would actually see if you couldn't reach out to local Democratic officials, introduce yourself, who you are, who you represent, what the values of your group are, and say, hey, I'm going to have a group of motivated folks with some nuanced opinions and a much higher information diet and appreciation than your average everyday voter. We'd love to get involved and help you guys out in any efforts that you're working on. That's the type of coalition building that Colin alleged to earlier that we hope is really going to set our groups apart in any city from other politically aligned groups like ours.
And then we have a final question that I accidentally clicked. I answered it on, but I didn't answer it. And it says, any put about the word? I like your platform a lot, but neoliberalism does not have the best name here at all. And it's also highly associated with right-wing conservative politics. So yeah, this is a conversation we're going to have with individual leads, especially the leads who want to found neoliberal chapters in South America. You're going to find a lot of regional and continental and country level variation in the interpretation of what neoliberal means. Fortunately, I guess is a way to put it, in the United States, it's really a word for center-left politics, so it works for us. It also works for a number of European countries, but I know in South America it has a very different connotation. So we're going to work with those groups to come up with branding and ways to phrase themselves so that you can be associated with the United States-based organization, and we can help you with support. But if you're not comfortable using the neoliberal label, we will work with you to come up with a different label or a different name for your organization. We're okay with that. I mean, we have YIMBY Neoliberal in San Francisco already. So we'd be happy to tweak things to make you as successful as possible in your city or country.
The other thing that I would add, just on a values basis, it's definitely the fact that the name is both a curse and a blessing. In the blessing side, I'll say it's a little happier. Colin's right, there are regional specific issues with the name neoliberal, but if you think about kind of what our group represents, there are a lot of names that we could have rolled with that are not nearly as exciting or inciting as the neoliberal project. If we were calling ourselves the American Ordoliberal Project, I don't think any of us would be here tonight because we wouldn't have gotten past the seed phase. But in the other sense, whereas neoliberal is used as a pejorative, again, regional variations that are going to change. But speaking for kind of the anglicized world, what we're doing is not often the pejorative that's used against us. Our group is actually far more progressive and concerned with the livelihoods of everyday people than not just what they think neoliberals are, but also potentially with their groups as well. Because our platform is a lot more multidimensional. It's not just focused on a class struggle or some academic nonsense like that. It's focused on real change to local issues that are going to affect the lives of everyday people.
So I think that's honestly a wrap, and we're coming up on time anyway, so I don't want to hold people long. But everyone, thank you so much for attending this information session. I'll reiterate what the next steps are going to be. You're going to be getting an email from either myself or Alex over the coming week. So if you don't see it by the end of this week, expect it Monday, Tuesday, or the weekend of next as we get through everyone who attended. And then we'll work one-on-one with each and every one of you to get all of your chapter backends ready, get resources to you, answer any more questions that you might have about the process. Alex, do you have any further closing thoughts, or are you good?
Nothing else from me. Very excited to work with everybody in this chat to do some really great stuff in your communities.
Likewise. Well, everyone, have a great evening, or a good morning, or a good afternoon, depending where you are in the world. And I greatly look forward to talking one-on-one with all of you in the coming days.
Have a good night, everybody.
Have a good night.